Hi everyone, I'm really pleased to be here today. I work for Pi Datametrics, which is a content performance and SEO tool. However, as my bio says, I used to work for Clark, so don't worry, I'm not going to be up here doing a big sales pitch. I know that you're all here to learn something and to take something away, and I've been where you are, and hopefully, as long as you can take away at least one useful insight from my talk today, then I feel like I would have done a good job. So, I'm here today to talk about data-driven strategies using customer intent trends. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because I used customer data a lot when I was at Clark's, and I managed to move it out of the SEO team and kind of hidden in a corner, and I moved it to be able to be spread through the whole business. And I saw that the impact that that had. So I'm here to try and help you to do something similar with your companies. So where's the biggest opportunity in marketing at the moment? I thought it was really brilliant, the response that that gentleman just gave about people getting too hung up in the tactics and not thinking about the aim of what you're actually trying to achieve. And I feel like the biggest opportunity in marketing is still the amount of customer data we have from search. So there are 3.5 billion searches globally every day on Google. And that's not even to mention all the other search engines, so YouTube, Yandex, Baidu, even Amazon and Pinterest. It's a huge chunk of information we've got about the customer. And we still get caught up on all the tactics of the new digital fads, which is really important to know about and to optimize for, but it's important not to forget about this epicenter of data. So first there was localization, then personalization, then came mobilization, and now we're all talking about AI and voice. And after that, it will be the next big thing. But these are all still getting powered from the huge epicenter, like I said, of data in the middle. So that's something that I'm going to try and help you all understand. So like I said, it's a huge source of customer research available. So during this presentation, I'm going to talk about anticipating customer needs, which should be the main purpose of any marketer and the foundation of any good marketing strategy. So I'm going to go through how you can discover them, commercialize them, analyze them, and predict them. So let's start with the very basics. Step one, discovering customer trends. And I'm going to use the example of the beauty sector for these slides. So here we can see a search volume trend chart for the beauty category, and it's broken down into subcategories. We've got body care, dental, electrical, fragrance. And this is purely looking at search volume over 2017, and you can immediately start to see some trends here. You can see that fragrance, probably unsurprisingly, peaks massively in Q4. I mean, it's unsurprising that it peaks, but it might surprise some people by just how much it peaks. You can see that nails peaks in summer, and it also peaks during the party season in December. But the line I'm going to concentrate on most here is that hair care, when purely looking at search volume, is the top category for 10/12 of the year. So there's a huge amount of search going on around the hair care category. And then that's where we start to add slightly more data points to become a bit more intelligent about this. So after you've looked at the search volume trends, you can add another layer of data, which we call commercialization. So here we've added our own proprietary intelligence and given these different categories values. If you want to know the full formula of how we've done this, you can come and see me afterwards, but it's basically taking into account the commercialization of keywords and groups of keywords using CPC and competition information. So if you think about that hair care line that was first for the whole year last year for 2017 in search volume, you can now see that when you've applied this commercial layer, it's dropped to the 4th top category throughout the year. Now, why is this? That's because hair care in particular is a topic that there's a lot of research about that isn't particularly that commercial. So, for example, people could be looking for blonde hair or blonde hairstyles, but they're not actually looking to go and buy anything. Whereas this layer of commercialization means that you're concentrating your efforts on the keywords that are actually going to have some kind of buying intent, so for example, blonde hair dye. You can see some other insights here. So electrical has become one of the most valuable categories as well, which again is probably unsurprising because of the high AOV that that category would have. And also that makeup has become a really valuable category. So now we can move on to becoming even more intelligent about this. So this is when 1 year of search data is really interesting for businesses and really insightful, and you can start gaining insights at that level. But if you have multiple years of data, that's when I feel like businesses' ears kind of really prick up, because you can see patterns forming over the different years, and you can begin to spot trends evolving, and you can begin to spot similarities and differences that you can really learn from. And So this is, again, the beauty sector from 2014 to 2017 with the same categories. You can see that there are some similarities there. So, for example, fragrance, like I said, peaks every single year at Christmas. It wasn't just in 2017, it's happened every year since 2014. You can also see that the growth begins as early as April every single year for fragrance. So this is probably something that your marketing team would be interested in, so they can plan their categories around the times when fragrance is most commercially valuable. But it's also useful to the rest of the business because they can see if they think they've got enough stock to fulfill that growth at the Christmas peak every single year. They can see if they think that they're merchandising their stores in the right way to fulfill on that demand for fragrance. And it can be spread in a huge variety of ways. But you can also see when there are some differences and when there's some growth opportunity. So this is looking at just the makeup category alone. And you can see that back in 2014, it was the third top category within this sector for online searches and the most valuable searches. Whereas in 2017, in January, it's become the top category for online searches in the beauty sector. And you can really see that massive jump between 2015 and 2016, where behaviour for this category really started to shift online. So not only does search trends tell you what people are searching for, but it can tell you about the shift in the customer behaviour. So obviously between 2015 and 2016, there was a whole new market of buyers coming in and shopping online for the makeup category. There was also the introduction of vloggers and bloggers and endorsements of makeup online, which meant that people didn't necessarily have to go into store to try on the makeup and see how it looked. They've got endorsements from other people. So again, this data can be spread business-wide. So you can see the shifts and the growth, and you can say again, do we think we've got enough stock to capitalize on this growth for the makeup category? Do we think that our website is merchandised in the right way? You can even break it down a category below this. So this is a really top-line approach, but you can break it down into makeup and see the subcategories within that. So you could see, was it face makeup or eye makeup or lip makeup that's really driving that growth? And that can help you with, like I said, your merchandising, your stock choices, how you want to plan your marketing campaigns. So it's a huge wealth of information for merchandisers. As I said, it's tripled over 3 years, so that's a huge commercial opportunity that you need to be capitalizing on. And then this is the fourth step, and this is what the really intelligent companies are doing at the moment. They're using the past data, so when you've got 4 years previous data, you can use it to try and predict the future. So you can predict the best case and worst case scenario for these trend lines, so it actually helps with the planners planning forward. So instead of just going along kind of with the data analysts and understanding what's happened in the past, you can really influence the future of your business by looking at what you think you should be concentrating on for the next 12 to 18 months. And that's when you kind of really get taken seriously within a business, when you can help them to spot the opportunity in the future. So who's doing well at the moment and who's capitalizing on all this search volume? Here we're sticking to the beauty sector and we're looking at a share of voice chart. So who are the companies that have the top online real estate in the SERPs and the organic SERPs for the beauty categories? And again, it's broken down by category so you can see which areas they're performing best at compared to their competitors. So again, from charts like this, you can take a huge wealth of business level knowledge. So you can see that Superdrug is the top performer, and that the reason that they're the top performer is because of their hugely strong performance in the makeup category. So if I was a brand such as L'Oreal, I would think maybe Superdrug online is a better place to be advertising and merchandising my products than Boots, because they're obviously getting more traffic and more impressions for the makeup category online than Boots. You can also see the vast array of different types of companies that are competing for this space online. So you have retailers like Superdrug and Boots. You have publishers, so you have Cosmopolitan in there. Again, really strong for the makeup category. So again, if you're a brand, you might think about advertising on Cosmopolitan as your first choice of publisher. You also have department stores, so Debenhams in there, and you even have Tesco's and supermarkets in there. So it just goes to show businesses that your competition online might be completely different to the competition that you had kind of predefined in your head. And again, huge wealth of knowledge can be taken from this. So now we've identified all of the trends you can get from search, I'm going to talk a little bit through how different teams can use search trends to help with their strategies. And the approach that we tend to apply is called plan, influence, peak, repeat. So you're identifying when you need to be planning. You're seeing when people are in that influence stage and ready to be influenced and they're researching. You're seeing when peak buying times are, and then you decide whether or not you think it's a repeat trend and something that's going to carry on being really popular, or whether it's just kind of a one-off fad. So I'm deep diving here into a slightly different category. We've got retail fashion category now, and I'm looking at the recurring trends that there is in retail fashion for festival clothing, which is obviously an event-triggered trend, so it happens every year, even though it's growing. So you can start applying this strategy to a trend line like this. So you can identify when planning and publishing time is. So this is kind of the downtime when volumes are really low before interest starts increasing at all for the topic. It's a really good time to kind of step back, curate your content. You already have content available on your site that you think is suitable for this. And if you want to introduce new content, do you think that you're going to have to think about the way that you architect your site to make sure you don't have any conflicting content there? It's a really good time as well to make sure that you're publishing it early, so you're fully optimized before the interest even starts to grow. You then have this growth period, which is a really interesting stage for me, because I think too frequently this research phase is missed out when people are doing their planning. I've seen so frequently people planning all their marketing campaigns around the peak, so both sides of it, and not far enough in advance of the peak. If you add up all those different data points of the search volume there, that obviously far surpasses the amount of searches there are actually at the peak time. So this is a really good time for you to influence your customers, and you should make sure that all of your content in your site is fully optimized and fully visible for all the terms that you want to be appearing for before this stage. And then hopefully when you have your peak purchase period, you're already kind of done all the hard work and you shouldn't be panicking about orders and sales coming through. You then need to identify, it's really crucial to identify the time when all the demand kind of drops. So you can see when the research is slowing down a bit, and you kind of identify and point this out to the rest of your business, and then you can do the deciding whether you think it's going to be a trend that happens again and again and again, and how you'll prepare for that, or if you think, like I said, it's just a one-off and you can get rid of all the content and do a real hygiene job on your site. So that's how I would see the SEO team using this data. However, looking at the same trend line, you can also give really interesting insight to the whole digital department. So again, this is looking at festival clothing. You have that planning time to think about how you're going to build value and build a reputation for whatever topic it is you're trying to be optimized for. So it's a time to identify what PR you want to be conducting, maybe using some of those share of voice charts to identify which publishers you want to be present in, and it's time to start identifying social influencers all on the same topic, and get yourself ready in prime position for the influence stage. You then have the influence stage here, and this is probably even more crucial for the digital department than it is for the search team, because very few businesses actually capitalize on this research phase. So people tend to still a lot work on last click for PPC, so they bid the most, and the competition rates and the CPC rates are highest when people are actually going through and purchasing things. But what that means is when there's huge research search volumes where people aren't purchasing, the CPC rates are unbelievably low and uncompetitive. So if you can kind of be a bit brave about it, you can invest a lot of your media budgets in the research stage where you're kind of accepting the fact that people might not necessarily convert, and then you can almost switch it off in the kind of peak time, or heavily reduce it, because you've already influenced the bulk of your customers, and you're not having to pay those really high competition rates in the process of doing that. And what it also means is you've got a huge amount of traffic to your site to build up a really strong cookie pool. So if you do all your paid media in advance of the peak, you're getting traffic to your site in a far more efficient way. And then when it does get to the peak, you can use that cookie data to retarget, be it through retargeting lists on search ads, or retargeting display, or even through retargeting email campaigns. And you can get those conversions in a far more efficient way than had you had to pay like the full whack CPC media costs. And then it's also really important to perform during the peak purchase. So I said you can use that as a retargeting phase. And then it's important in this stage to know when to turn it all off and to kind of identify that that trend is just dying down for that season. So that's the SEO team and the digital team. So how can this data now be useful to the organization as a whole? So it's looking at the same trend line again for festival clothing. You can use the planning time for your kind of trading planners and your merchandisers to think, okay, what are we expecting for the season to come? Is it the same as what we saw last season? Is there anything different that might trigger slightly different trends to the ones we saw last year? And you can optimize your trading plan to see if you can try and predict all of those events and make sure you've got a really intelligent trading plan. You can also use the influence stage as a really key merchandising time to make sure that you've got all the products front of store that people might be researching and making decisions on, that you've got the products really obvious on your website, so it's aligned through all your different channels. Obviously, perform in the peak. But this is a really important bit for the whole organization. You could identify when it might be time to discount or clear your stock because you think demand is dying. So, had you maybe spotted the kind of flatlining that's going on in June 2016, that might have been a time where on a Monday trading meeting, people might have said, okay, we think demand might be dying down for this, so maybe we should start about discounting our stock. But if you've looked at previous year's data, you can see that there might be another additional peak, so you don't want to get rid of all your stock before that peak time. So it's really useful for those planners and trading planners to be aware of when it's the right time to discount and get rid of your stock. So how do you measure the success of this, and how do you measure the success of the performance of using this search data? So we're looking again at another share of voice here, looking at the example of fashion retail. You can see the top 30 performers for visibility, but you can also see the others. And what we've noticed here is the people that are in the top performers for online organic visibility are also usually reporting really strong business metrics as well. So the fact that they're using this data in a smart way online is also indicative of how switched on they are kind of throughout their business. So over Christmas, we saw ASOS, for example, which is the second most visible in share of voice for retail fashion. Over Christmas, they reported pre-tax profits of up to 145%. Next, as well, there was a headline saying that their results signal good Christmas for UK leaders. So one performance of a really intelligent, good retailer can actually affect the predictions for the whole category. So these are the people that we know are using this data in a really intelligent way for joined up and intelligent customer journeys. But another reason that we really like these share of voice charts is they can be used in a really cyclical way when you're building your strategies. So they can be used right at the start of your strategy when you're trying to identify where your competitors are outperforming you, which categories they've got stronger performance in than you have, what they're doing right and what you might want to replicate of what they're doing to make sure that you then become in the top performers. But you can then take all that insight, action it all, and come back in a month or 2 months' time and review it as a measuring tool for the success of that activity. So you can see I've made all these changes, I've tried to replicate the success of the top performers, I've now moved up 2% share in my online visibility. And if you're reporting back things like that to your senior leadership team, that's a far more interesting story for you to be telling. You know, we've increased our online visibility by 2% in the market, rather than kind of reporting on individual rankings or, you know, we've moved up 10 places for dresses. And it's when you really start getting listened to in a business and when people really start taking this search data quite seriously. So you can identify the star performers, see what they all have in common, and like I said, with all of the star performers in retail, they put search data right at the start of building their strategies, and they feed it in a really intelligent way to all their different channels. And in doing this, they're actually helping the channels by giving them a framework, because it gives them a smart framework from which they can be more creative, instead of trying to put the search data in at the end and trying retrospectively fit it into the content that your brand team might have already created. I think we've all been there when you get a piece of brand content and you've got to kind of find somewhere for it on the website and try and optimize it and try and make sure it fits in with all your other content. So putting it first just benefits everyone. So it's all very well me standing here and saying this data is amazing and you can use it in fantastic ways and all the departments should listen to what you have to say about the data. But actually, in real life business, probably you might not get listened to straight away. And people aren't used to necessarily accepting this data. It's new data for them to be making some quite serious decisions on. So how can you try and get it listened to and fed in through all of your business? So a really good way of doing this is to try and integrate it with other data sets. So you can tag it onto something that they're already used to receiving. So for example, when I was working at Clark's, people weren't necessarily that keen to be listening to Google search trend data and that they weren't that trusting of it. But when I tagged it onto the back of the Kantar customer research data that they were already getting, people took it a lot more seriously and trusted it because it was something that they were used to receiving and used to making decisions on already. We also know of a lot of retailers that get their Google search trend data and their organic value data into trading plans. So when people are deciding what fashion trends and colours and materials are going to be good for that season, they get Google data in there too. But another way of doing it, which we've recently done at Pi, is to integrate it with other marketing customer data sets. So we've done a study with Brandwatch, which is a social listening tool, to integrate search queries with social conversations to see if we could spot any more patterns. And we used the example of the financial sector and the topic of personal debt. So this is showing discussion volumes from Brandwatch in the dark blue navy line, and also search volumes from Pi Datametrics in the light blue line from September 2013 to July 2017. And immediately here you can see some similar patterns emerging. So you can see that there are peaks every year around the conversation of personal debt in January, some years bigger than others. But that's obviously to be expected. We've just had Christmas, which was a very heavy spending period. So people were all off buying fragrance, as we saw in the charts earlier. And then when January comes around, they've got a big credit card bill and they're thinking about personal debts. It's also a time for people to be doing admin in January. They're kind of getting their life sorted for the year ahead. And when Brandwatch took a bit of a deeper dive into the tweets that were going on at that time, they saw a lot of sentiment around, this is the year I'm going to get debt-free, as kind of a New Year's resolution. So not only does it give the patterns you're seeing slightly more validation, you can get another layer of sentiment analysis when you're looking at it from another marketing data set as well. It also helps you to identify when external factors might be at play affecting the customer behaviour, affecting the trends in that market. So this is sticking to the same sector of financial sector and personal debt, but it's specifically looking at student debt. And you can see there aren't too many patterns around this until July, August 2017, where you see huge peaks in both data sets. And this is because this is when the Labour Party conference was going on. They were talking a lot about student debt and reducing the student fees or abolishing student debt. So you see the peak in both data sets. And this is important for marketeers because if you can identify what external factors are affecting your market and affecting the trends in your market, this is something that you can use to begin to predict what events might actually impact your market in the future. And can you predict these, and can you be ready for them, and can you capitalize on them? And finally, you can look at the differences between search versus social topics. So we've broken down all the categories into subcategories here, so different topics around personal debt, so mortgage, credit card, student debt, etc. You can see there's far more diverse conversations going on social rather than in search engines. So in search engines, it's kind of more intent-based. It's really over-indexing on mortgages and credit cards. So people are looking to complete something or to find something. Whereas on social channels, people are having a lot more varied conversations. Now, if I was a brand in the financial sector, I'd look at this and think, am I creating enough content to be able to join into all these different types of conversations? And am I putting the content in the right place for people to be able to find it? And is this an opportunity for me to get more visibility on my brand and on my content and what I have to offer? So it's a big opportunity spotter as well, looking at multiple data sets. So the key takeaways from this talk: think of the customer needs first and the tech and all the tactics afterwards. Use trends as customer research data. It's a huge opportunity for you, and it's surprising how many brands aren't using it in this way at the moment. Look at the value of this trend data, not just the volume. So you're making sure that you're focusing your attention and your resource into the most commercially valuable areas. Try and get organisational buy-in for your data so you can have aligned planning and a smoother customer journey, and it's just better for everyone. And integrate with other data sets to get a truer view of customer intent. And that's about all I've got to say.
Wonderful.